with a couple of days to absorb the inevitable news that Wimbledon canceled, just a couple of quick tennis thoughts. What you see behind me, obviously, is center court. And I put the picture there for a reason. The last time, in fact, the only time I've ever really stepped foot within inches, and I'll explain this, of center court was 2 years ago in early June, when we went to center court from Paris during Roland Garros to tape a program for Tennis Channel on the 10th anniversary of the Strokes of Genius match, the Federer-Nadal match. And John Wertheim and I made the trip from Paris. Tim Henman was part of our program, and because Tim is a member of the club, we were allowed this access prior to the courts being prepared for the championships to get down there. But the point I'm making is that the inches part, I literally was standing an inch and a half from the edge of the grass and took several pictures around the court. With Tim there and some officials from the club that were escorting us down to the court, we were still not allowed to step on the grass. You cannot step on the grass. It was an astounding small reminder of the All England Club and what Wimbledon is. And even though they're hugely independent and do what they want, they handled this cancellation announcement in a most dignified and classy way. Okay, where do we go? I think now the fact that we know there will be no tennis until most likely August if we're good, the hard court season if we're good. The U.S. Open questions have already started being asked. Whenever tennis comes back, I don't think there's going to be one blanket approach from people. Tennis is an individual sport. And as we've learned over the years, individuals have different patterns, their own patterns of preparation, of practice, and of play. And I think most players will revert to their prior patterns. Some who love to play every week will play every week. Others who like to pick and choose their spots, some because of age, some because of injury, some because of hoping to prevent injury at an age, will pick and choose their spots. But I think what we will see is awaiting how tennis returns in its structure. And I think all the players are waiting for this. How are rankings determined? When will points be defended? How will they be defended? How will protected rank entries, which are so vital for players trying to regain their traction? Is it a CeCe Bellis coming back from her surgeries on the women's side, or Jack Sock trying to use wildcards to get himself back on the men's side? How will all of that play out? I think those are the questions that none of us know the answers to, and it will determine how tennis resumes in large part. I do think, though, it's imperative to play, and play as soon as safely possible. There are just too many livelihoods at stake here, and this is no more important than any other part of society where the same thing happens. But in just this little tennis window that we're talking about here, there are livelihoods at stake. There are way too many people right now that are without, not just players, but all of their staff, their physios, their trainers, their coaches, the administrators of all the tours, let alone all the other people who work at events and whose livelihoods depend on the professional tennis tour. They're all at stake here, balanced against the individual tournaments. And thankfully, people like John Wertheim and Chris Clary in the New York Times have started addressing this in the last couple of days. And that's going to be the balance. The individual tournaments who need revenue, and the individual tournaments survival, particularly those on the lower tiers of the main tours, are the ones whose survival may be most challenged. And that's something I want to try to address next week. And I'm going to hopefully reach out to a couple of people that can talk about this, because I think it's so significant to how tennis comes back. In the Wimbledon case, I was a little surprised that Wimbledon didn't at least try to wait. And perhaps it was because of the blowback that the French Federation received when they made their decision to move the French Open. But once the Olympics went down, I thought Wimbledon may try to move into 3 to 4 weeks later. And after all this conversation about the grass, well, you're still talking about let's say the first week of August. And that's when they played Olympic tennis on center court in the 2012 games. It was during that window. The grass was fine. In fact, they played, of course, the Olympics on center court and several of the other courts just weeks after the championships were held, and it was fine. Obviously, Wimbledon, in consultation with the authorities in England, must have felt that postponing perhaps for 3 weeks and holding out hope of holding the championships wasn't going to make a significant difference in the overall health. And I think that's where we come down to the final point I'll make, which is when tennis does resume, there's going to need to be a training camp. I mean, I went through this 25 years ago in baseball, coming out of the awful strike in which baseball players from August of 1994 through April of 1995 did nothing. They individual workouts, maybe small groups, but nothing in real baseball terms for a long period of time. The strike lockout was finally settled, and baseball basically gave the players about a 2-week hurry-up training camp, spring training, and then we're going to get back and play games. Once we did, the quality of play and players that were involved would be far better experts than I, but having been a broadcaster then and watching it every day, the quality of play wasn't sharp at the beginning, but it was better than no game. And I think everybody involved agreed. And I would suggest that about a month after play resumed in 1995, nobody cared. It was just great to have the game back. And I think tennis has to confront that same question. How important is it to have competition, safe competition, most importantly, safe competition, even if it's without spectators? If we expect and demand full normalcy, we'd have no idea, none of us, when that's going to be possible in the most global professional sport. Tennis will have its greatest challenge of any professional sport that I'm aware of coming back because of the true global nature of it. But if you can have competition, even without spectators, is that better than nothing? And again, I emphasize safe. It has to be safe for the competitors, safe for the physios and trainers, safe for everyone else that would be involved. But to put tennis back, to put livelihoods back, to put tennis back on television, which is an instrumental part of the financial spine of the sport, does that work? And is that more important than waiting? And how does that play for the regular tour events? Can the regular tour events go on, let's just say, with just television? And they don't have the sponsor tents and the grip and grins and meet and greets that are essential parts of those tournaments' livelihoods. I think those are the questions that we have to face, or at least watch tennis face as governing bodies going forward in the next month to 2 months. Basically, that question: is it more important to have competition without spectators, or is it more important just to have the full normalcy back in the sport? And again, that's the question I hope to address with you all next week, but thanks for watching.